All right, guys, welcome back to Digital Forensics. This is chapter 2. This one lecture does count. This is the one you should be watching. Even though I did chapter 1, it's just an optional chapter. It's just a brief overview of the entire thing. Here we're going to be talking about the investigator's office, what it consists of, and the lab, which kind of go hand in hand. So here are the objectives for this chapter. It's only 43 slides. This should be relatively quick. Then after this, I will do half of the next chapter, which will carry on until the week after. So don't worry, won't be too much. But back here to this chapter, we're going to discuss describe the certification requirements for digital forensic labs, list physical requirements for a digital forensic lab, explain the criteria for selecting a basic forensic workstation. So, what do you need to pick to make a basic computer station or a specialized station for you to do your work with? Describe components used to build a business case for developing a forensics lab. So in other words, going over what equipment, tools, and all that fun jazz stuff. So here's what the definition of a digital forensic lab is. Question, or this might be a question on a quiz and an exam. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, hubba, hubba. So digital forensic lab, where you conduct your investigations, store your evidence, house your equipment, hardware, and software. ANSIASQ, National Accreditation Board, or ANAB, provides accreditation of crime and forensic labs worldwide. I guess they're the governing body. Accreditation includes forensic labs that analyze digital evidence, audit lab functions, and procedures. So they're the guys that have to check off your lab once you build it and give you the rubber stamp. So here's what the lab manager's duties are for a lab. In other words, identify duties of a lab manager and staff. So if you manage a lab, you're going to set up processes for managing cases. So here's how you're going to go about doing cases, yada, yada. Remote group consensus and discussion making. So you're all going to discuss decisions related to the lab and cases. Maintain fiscal responsibility of lab needs. You're going to the lab's budget. Did they burn through flash drives? Did they burn through hard drives? How can we make it more efficient? How many more do we need? How many more to burn through a month? Yada, yada, yada. Enforce ethics standards among lab staff members. So you're going to hold everyone to a higher standard, right? You're going to enforce these, don't break these rules, follow these rules, that kind of thing. Time updates to the lab. Technology changes, events could change the, update. I looked up because I'm assuming there will be event above you. Things would need to change. That's where the updates come in. The flooring needs to get redone, waxed, what have you. When they're going to have it cleaned. When is the lighting going to get changed? Things like that. Establish and promote quality assurance processes. What does that mean? Make sure redundancies in place, essentially, and make sure everything you do follows through. Not falls apart, follows through with what you mean and what you want to do. Set reasonable production schedules. You can't overwork people. You only work on this task for X amount of time. If you need more time, tell me. Yada, yada, yada. That's how life of a manager goes. You delegate tasks and make sure they get done with a reasonable amount of time. But you've got to be reasonable. People have lives, Estimate how many cases an investigator can handle. Some people can't handle more than 5 cases at a time. It's a lot to look through and sift through. Keep that in mind too, guys, if you were a manager. The duties continue for a manager are this. Estimate when to expect preliminary and final results. Week, 2 weeks, a month. It just depends on the size of the data. Sorry, I'm itchy. So I'm going to talk about the riot case for a minute. That happened in the Capitol. Remember, January 6th, the insurrection date? Remember how big that was? You know how big the amount of data is for that thing? It's ridiculously stupid. Big. I think they said it was over 1 million physical pieces of paperwork or more beyond that. Can you imagine sifting through that? And then it's not even digital? I'll take forever. That's where a team comes into place. That's where this kind of thing would be in place for a lab. But it's, be multiple labs, not just one lab. Create and monitor lab policies for staff. Yeah, you're going to create lab rules and guidelines and things they need to cover. It's still Monday, guys, when I'm recording this. I'm still pretty exhausted. Provide a safe, secure workspace for staff and evidence. Yeah, it's only you and your staff if you're the manager. No one else is allowed in there other than the IT manager if they need to talk to you. But even then, you probably meet them outside. You don't want them, damaging equipment, corrupting hardware, or whatever. Not because they're a wizard or anything special, but someone could trip or hurt themselves or damage something without knowing. Staff member duties. So you're just a worker. Knowledge and training. You gotta be knowledgeable about hardware and software, OS, operating systems is what it means, and file types. FAT32 extensions for like Word, for example, docs, PPT for Outlook, things like that. Deductive reasoning. So what would cause you to do this? How can you do this? You're playing network sleuth, computer sleuth. You're playing detective, computer detective is what I was trying to get to. Workers are regulated by a lab manager. Yeah, he would oversee your work, or she would oversee your work. Check the NAB website for online manual information. They have a ton of stuff, guys. I'm not gonna exactly go through it here. You're online. Rate cost out, it's a monthly, quarterly, annual expenses. Excuse me. That's the job of budget planning here. Is how much you spend a month in terms of equipment, maintenance, people, how much you do a quarter, how much you do every year, things like that. Use past investigation experience to extrapolate expected future costs. So if it costs you, let's say $50 for hard drives this month, or for one ride. Sorry, let me think of something I can think of. So in the past, if it cost you $200 for hard drives, and since NVMe's have been getting cheaper, right now they cost $100, how much are you gonna save? How many more do you go through a month? Well, so you go through $1,000 of hard drives every month, but now you got them cheaper because they're just becoming more widely available. Cool, you save money. That would be your budget. Expenses per lab include hardware, which I just totally talked about, software, licensing, facility space. If you work as your own individual business, yeah, but that's normally covered if you work in private or public sector. Personnel training, yeah, that's something you have to pay for almost every month, though, not every week or every quarter. Just depends how you guys would facilitate training. Take a week and go here and do this, or months, or attend this conference and yada yada yada. Estimate the other cases your lab expects to examine. Identify types of computers you're likely to examine. That's all part of budget and planning. This gets dry, guys. I'm sorry. Take into account changes in technology. Again, I mentioned this happens faster than most people think, but I highly doubt that SATA drives are going to go away the day of the dodo, with the way of the dodo, with the next year and a half. So, or 10 years, still be prevalent. Use statistics. Oh my God, I'm sorry, guys. Use statistics to determine what kind of computer crimes are more likely to occur. Yeah, this is where you would look at the area you're working in. Is it more white collar crime, blue collar crime? Is it mob crime? Things like that. International syndicates and stuff. It's tax evasion. That's where you would figure out what kind of work you're going to be looking into. Uses information to plan ahead your lab requirements cost. That you would kind of use it to base how much power you need for machines to do the work, what kind of equipment you need other than the computer hookups, power, blah 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 blah, blah UPSs. You imagine it, it's all there, and then reaching that stupid little moth flying around. So check statistics for the Uniform Crime Report federal reports. These slides will be posted, guys. You will be able to go through them at your leisurely expense. I will tell you this right now. Exams are open book, open note. I'm not someone to deny you. Just like in the real world, you will have a computer in front of you. Same time you take your test, you will have your computer in front of you. You look up what you need to look up. I will not judge you. It is part of life. Identify crimes committed with specialized software. Yeah, you can be using specialized software to identify what they did. When setting up lab for a private company, check hardware and software inventory. Problems reported last year. Yeah, problems are common. That happens a lot. Future developments in computer technology. You can't really future proof anything, because technology changes. You just got to stay ahead of the latest advancements in technology, or up to, not ahead. Time management is a major issue with choosing software and hardware to purchase. Yeah, you got to plan. I mean, top of the line processors are great for the first 3 years, give or take. Then they start to weed out. So how often do you want to push your machines every 3 to 5 years? That's what you kind of got to look at. So if your data gets too big to extrapolate or dig through, and your processor can't keep up, what do you do? Break it into smaller chunks. Still takes a ton of time. So keep going. Update your skills through appropriate training. I've mentioned this. This is part of acquiring certification and training. Sorry, guys, I should have read the header. Thoroughly research the requirement, cost, acceptability in your area of employment. Most police departments hire 1 to 2 people to do this. They don't hire tons of people. The federal government hires more people than you think to do this kind of stuff. Like the IRS is a big one. International Association of Computer Investigation Specialists, IACIS, created by police officers who want to formalize credentials in digital investigation. To complete the IACIS test are designated as certified forensic computer examiners. This is something you'll have to take if you want to go into law enforcement, into the digital aspect side of things. You will have to take that exam. I'm not sure how much it costs. I'm sure I can find out for you if you want to know. I will let you know. Sometimes your employer covers it or requires you to take it within 90 days. So ISC squared certified cyber forensic professionals, or CCFPs, requires a knowledge of the following: digital forensics, malware analysis, which I will have you guys do, incident response. Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a real virus. E-discovery, which means digital discovery. Other disciplines related to cyber investigations. That can be a plethora of things. Moving on. More certification and training. High-tech crime network. Certified computer crime investigator, basic and advanced level. Certified computer forensic technician, basic and advanced level. In case certified examiner certification, open to the public and private sectors, specific to use of mastery of in-case forensic analysis. I believe this is software. Candidates are required to have licensed copy of in-case. Yeah, that's what I thought. Access data certified examiner, ACE certification. Open to the public and private sectors, specific to use and mastery of access data ultimate toolkit. I have never played with that toolkit. I'm gonna see if I can get some. The exam has a knowledge database component and practical skill component. It's a very hands-on kind of exam, though. Other training certifications: EC Council, sysadmin, audit, network security, SANS Institute, Defense Cyber Investigation Training Academy. God, that is a mouthful. CCITA. Other kinds of training certificates continued. International Society of Forensic Computer Examiners. That's kind of more international, but that one's pretty big. Computer Technology Investigators Network, CTIS. I mentioned that in the first unit if you looked into it. Digital Forensics Certification Board, DFCB. Cloud Security Alliance. Yeah, that's still relevant. Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. That is, if you get federal law, you go through there if you want to be an investigator. National White Collar Crime Center. That is a new one to me. That one's pretty common though too, I think. So, determining the physical requirements for a computer forensics lab. Most of your investigations conducted in the lab, workbench, I mentioned this prior. Lab should be secure so evidence is not lost, corrupted, or destroyed. Yeah. Only people which have access to the lab are you and your forensics manager, if the digital forensic manager, if you have one in there. That's it. The IT manager should not be allowed there. Regular IT technicians should not be allowed in there. Heck, secretaries should not be allowed in there because janitors, to an extent, if they clean the floor, nothing else, because they can damage or destroy equipment, and not by malicious intent. It's just an accident. Provide a safe, secure physical environment because it's very sensitive, the stuff you're working on. Sorry if you hear a plane that's passing overhead. Keep inventory control of your assets. Know when to order more supplies. So what it means by keep inventory control of your assets is tag and bag all your stuff that you use regularly. You know, can't use the same hard drive forever. You gotta have different drives for different things, different assets, different cases, different drive. You can't use the same drive over and over and over and over because it's gonna get corrupted. You would need multiple drives. You know, drive 3 is assigned to case 4, drive 5 is assigned to case 8, yada 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 yada. And then you keep up with your inventory and I'm running low on hard drives, I have 4 left. Let me order 10. It just depends how busy you are in terms of caseload. So secure facility should prevent integrity. Prevent. Should preserve the integrity of evidence data. What does that mean? Who has access to this facility in your area? Only you. So you're responsible for preserving the data. Make sure it doesn't get damaged, lost, or tampered with. Minimum requirements: small room with true floor to ceiling walls. So no false walls like drywall, empty wall, like real brick and mortar walls. Door access with locking mechanism. You can have a physical lock. You can have another layer of security by having a key card only for that room. No one else can. Secure container. That's where you store stuff, only with a lock or however you do it. No one else has access to it but you. Visitor log. In case someone needs to visit you, they sign in. They only meet them at the door. You don't go beyond that. People working together should have same access level. Yep. If you have more than one person working there, that are staff members, you guys will have the same access level, the same kind of things. Brief your staff about security policies. Security policies change and are updated. You gotta let them know what's changed, what's relevant, what isn't. You know, don't access this folder after a certain amount of time because it's pruned or looked at or what have you. That kind of policy. Moving on. Look, I'm losing my voice. So conducting high-risk investigations. High-risk investigations demand more security than minimum lab requirements. Tempest facilities, electromagnetic radiation proofed. What does that mean? I don't know if you guys ever seen Breaking Bad. There is a scene where they use a magnet to erase a computer from beyond a wall, beyond 6 feet. It's a big, powerful magnet. That's what it means, to make sure magnets can't erase things. Tempest facilities are very expensive. Yes, they are very pricey. You can use low emanation workstations instead. I've never heard that before. That's a new one for me too. Excuse me. So, using evidence containers, known as evidence lockers, must be secure so that no unauthorized personnel can easily access the device. Give me 1 second, guys. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Wife decided to interrupt me. I was mid-recording. I was talking about it. storage containers, you gotta have things locked away under lock and key to make sure only you have access to them, and no one else or your coworker that works with you within the field. Locate them in a restricted area. So again, it's an area you would have access to. Limit number of authorized people. The less hands in the cookie jar, the better. Maintain records of who is authorizing to access the container, or who is authorized. I'm sorry. You would have a log also of who went into the grab from bin 5 to work on whatever case you're working on, continuing your work, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Container should remain locked for non-use. Correct. If they're not being used, just lock them and put them away. So moving on for evidence containers. Almost to slide 20, guys. We will get through this, I guarantee it. If a combination lock system is used, provide the same level of security for the combination as the container's contents. I mean, yeah, or you can just make it digital locks, just scan a barcode or scan a key lock, not key lock, dang it. Those IDs with chips in them, something, I forgot the name of them. Destroy any previously combinations after setting up a new combination. Yeah, you would just mix it. Sorry, this is a little odd. Allow only authorized personnel to change lock combinations. Yeah, if you're using combination locks, only someone else can be in charge of it. And just make sure they have a combination lock written down. Change the combination lock every 6 months or when required. Yeah, you could change it every 4 months if you want. That's a security policy. You would figure out that's one of those things you would talk about. We change combination locks every 4 months, 3 months, whatever you have. This way someone gets in there and knows an old combination lock, they can't get access to it. Here, if you're using a keypad lock, this is more of what I think of. Appoint a key custodian, so only one person with a copy of the key. Stab sequential numbers on each duplicate key. If you make copies of the key, this key copy 1, key copy 2, key copy 3. Retain a registry list, which key is assigned to which authorized person. Yeah, that's part of security. Conduct a monthly audit. Yeah, who has their keys, who lost their keys. If you lose their keys, what's the punishment? What's the penalty? Take an inventory of all the keys. Place keys in a lockable container. So they would only get the keys when they need them, and they would check them out. You would log it. Maintain the same level of security for the keys as for evidence lockers. Yeah, they have to be the same kind of security level because only you guys should have access to it, right? Should the custodian be rummaging through the evidence locker? I don't think so. Change locks and keys annually. Yeah, you would change those. Annually isn't what I would do. I would do 6 months, to be honest. It's a pain in the butt, but it's more secure. Do not use a master key for several locks. Don't use the same master key for anything when it comes to evidence. That's just is what it is. And the last slide for evidence containers. Containers should be made of steel with an internal cabinet or external padlock. If possible, acquire a media safe. Those are freaking cool if you can get one. When possible, build an evidence storage room in your lab. Man, it's just more secure if it's in your area, right? Instead of being out with like the rest of the stuff that you would have, would it be a janitor closet? I don't think so. I keep saying janitor just so it's more not common, but so you guys will understand more of who shouldn't be around it. Keep an evidence log, update it every time evidence container is open or closed. You opened container 1 for whatever reason. Close container 1 at this time. There, you have recorded successfully. Keep a log or rolling inventory essentially of what's being accessed, when it's used, how it's used, and why it's used. This way there's no questions of hey, Charlie, that's in your coworker, why'd you go into bin 4 yesterday if there was nothing in it? It would know that. Why would he, you won't question people. It's there. Oh, I thought there was something in bin 4, rope pulling back. Oh, okay, cool. Problem solved, right? So overseeing facility maintenance, immediately repair physical damages. Is the tile falls from the roof. If you have like a T ceiling, is what it's called. If you look up in your classrooms, you'll see those. Get it fixed right away. Escort cleaning crews as they work. You can't let cleaning crews be in there by themselves. So let's say you're in there at 7 in the morning, and janitorial staff is there, and that's when you want them to clean the floors because you're there. That's when you do it. Minimize the risk of static electricity, anti-static pads, clean floor and carpets. You wouldn't have carpets. You would have tile, in my opinion, if you want to avoid any electric static stuff. But that involves getting the floors buffed, and that's a whole different animal. Maintain 2 separate trash containers. Materials are related to the investigation, sensitive material. So what you could do, let's say you have your workbench, you would have one trash bin under it. That's where stuff would go. That's part of the investigation that isn't relevant. You can trash it in there. Anything that's food related, you would eat out of the lounge, or maybe your cubicle, if you have it back there, that's where your food trash goes. And so you need those emptied, you would stick them outside of the area to get picked up in the morning if that's how you're arranging with custodial. That's what I'm kind of talking about trash. These are the little things you got to think about. When possible, hire specialized companies for this sensitive material. Yeah, those companies exist. They shred your stuff, they burn your stuff. You pay them a fee, and they take care of it. Remember John Wick, where the guy who gives gold coins in the first film is like tips his hat, thank you, John. They're a cleaning service for all stuff he did. Kind of similar to that, minus the gruesomeness of the killings, but in terms of cleaning up, that's what I'm kind of referring to. Enhance security by setting security policies. Enforce your policies. Yeah. Maintain a sign-in log for visitors. Yeah, you will have people knocking at your door. Hey, you got this ready? Come on in. Wait for me here. That's what you have in sign. Access. Anyone that is not assigned to the lab is a visitor. True. Even the janitors have to sign in. Escort all visitors at all time. Yeah, they cannot be there unsupervised. I've said this before. Use visible or audio indicators that a visitor is inside your premises. Visitor badge. So you would put a sticker on them, bright color. Like, hey, just letting you guys know, I'm escorting somebody to the locker room to collect locker for case. Blah 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 blah. So whatever they're working on, that means they can close it, minimize it. You know, they don't have to see things you're working on, or pull curtains or whatever you have to block your view. RS screens would be your best bet. Install an intrusion alarm system. Yeah, you're gonna need one. Hire a guard force for your lab. I mean, if your own private company, yeah, you would have 24/7 guards for that. They wouldn't be allowed inside either. Guard system, yeah, it's pretty common. But I think of it more in terms of working like in private or public. All that would be covered already. You wouldn't have to worry about that. But that's neither here nor there. It's just me free thinking, I guess, at that point. So, auditing. How do you audit these labs? Auditing ensures proper enforcement of policies. Audit should include inspecting the following facility components and practices. So this is everything you just checked for maintenance, technically, or essentially. Technically. Ceilings, floors, roof, exteriors, walls of the lab, doors, door locks, visitor logs, evidence container logs. At the end of every workday, secure any evidence that's not being processed in the front. So let's say you're working on something, you have a stack of 3 hard drives. It's this case. You only gone through 2 of the hard drives. You would literally put away the 2 hard drives back into the bin. You could separate them with like a piece of paper or write out them. Say I did these to this date. Then you put them there in the. You want to keep a log inside of what you've done. Then you will put for next day. Need to process hard drive 3, and you can label it with a number 3 with a Sharpie, so you'll know. Those are you can pick up from where you're going on. But yeah, if whatever you haven't worked on, put it away at the end of the day. Don't leave it out because it can grow feet and walk away. I've seen it happen, not in terms of digital evidence, but I've been working on stuff before where just it disappeared from my desk and then reappeared 3 hours later. It's like, what the hell? So it happens. So let's talk about trimming floor plans for a digital forensic lab. How would you configure your work area depending on your budget, amount of available floor space, the number of computers you assign to each computer investigator, and how big is your team? Yeah. Ideal for each to have 2 forensic workstations and 1 non-forensic workstation with internet access. You need to research things. So essentially, when you're working on this forensic stuff, you don't want to have those hooked up to a network of any kind because you can get in remotely, right? People can do stupid things. If it's hooked up to the network work, you dump this on a public file and accounting by accident. Now accounting is going to see what you're working on. That's a big breach of contract and a big breach of security. That's why they shouldn't be networked. But the reason you need also a computer that's on the internet is, yeah, you want to play music. I get it. That's not the point. But you need to research things. Like, what were they looking up? What were they doing? What does this relate to in terms of how do I do this? You're not going to know everything. Let's face it. We're human, guys. We don't know everything. So moving on with the floor plans here. Page part 207. Small labs usually consist of 1 or 2 workstations, which I mentioned, the research computer with internet access, which I talked about, and a workbench. You always see me say workbench. Its space allows, and storage cabinets. So this is just a small setup. Here's a picture of what it looks like. This is ID. Normally, if I were you guys personally, this layout, I would take the internet connected PC and stick it out more to the far left, like over here where the plug is. Then you would have your forensic and your workbench. To me, would go from. Let's see what mouse shows up. Yeah. So I would have it up to here, right? That's where your internet PC on its own little desk. You would swivel to it. But from here to here would just be a giant desk, like an L shape. You have a ton of space. You'd be comfortable in your cabinets over here for locking, and then a door. And if you want to be cool, you have a little chair here. If you have a visitor, you want to hang out and not have them touch anything. But that's just being nice. So that's what small lab looks like. Home-based lab, which kind of common. Kind of common, kind of not common. Medium-sized labs, typically those in private businesses. This is more of what I think of when you think of a regular in forensics lab. Have more workstations, should have at least 2 exits for safety reasons. Yeah. Cubicles or separate offices should be part of the layout to reinforce need to know policy. More library space for software and hardware storage. Yeah, I'll show you that to you next. This is what it looks like. Typically, though, for private, you wouldn't have more than 3 forensic workers, not 4. That's more for a larger business. But yeah, see the workbench there? Kind of works. It's a really tiny room though they're giving you here. So going on, just part 6 of 7 here. Apologies, you just heard a door close outside. People coming and going from the house. State law enforcement or the FBI usually runs most large regional digital forensic labs. Yeah, this is what I think of when I think of digital labs. Have a separate evidence room. One or more custodians might be assigned to manage control of traffic in and out of the evidence room. Oh, it means security custodians, not like cleaning, mopping the floor custodians. Should have at least 2 controlled exits and no windows. Yeah, you don't want anyone getting in or peeking in either. Here's what they look like usually. Yeah, this is a little more common. Well, this is still kind of cramped. To be honest, this would be a lot bigger than this though. The evidence room makes sense. The workbench area kind of doesn't. If anything, these would be swapped, and this space would be out to like here, and that would be the conference area because the conference room would have to kind of be private, even though you have these areas to get in and out of. You want this to be more private because the things you guys discuss doesn't need to be heard. You know what I mean? You can walk by it here through the window, through the door, sometimes, but this is still cramped. Sorry, guys. It's my little tidbit about myself. My dad's a mechanical engineer / architect. The man's like almost 80. And from seeing this and from growing up around blueprints and stuff, I knew for a fact this would not fly because it's too damn small. Anyways, just ignore my brain going off on a weird ass tangent there. So moving on. So when you select the basic forensic workstation, you need to take your budget into consideration. So use less powerful workstations for mundane tasks like internet. You don't need a high-end horsepower machine to go on the internet, do you? Hell, even a Chromebook would be fine if you really want to save money. But it depends what you're researching and how far down the rabbit hole you want to go. You're going to use a multi-purpose. No, I don't want a dolphin. Use multi-purpose workstations for resource-heavy analysis tasks. So more powerful machines used for research or analytic work. Research, sorry. So, selecting a workstation for a lab. These labs have the most diverse needs for computing investigation tools. A lab might need legacy systems and software to match what's used in the community. So yeah, you have people that like to run old hardware, but if they do something that's illegal on old hardware, you don't have that connector. What do you do? So you need to have something that can run old hardware in the background. You need a virtual machine. You can clone it, clone their hard drive and run it that way, sure. But what if you need a physical connector for some reason for, I don't know, a key you had to clone from their machine that you found? It has to be physically, can't be digital. That's what it's talking about, stuff like that. Also, like, remember back in the day, there was the old like Kia phones that are considered indestructible. You drop them on the floor, and the floor breaks. It's the right joke. Like those things are getting harder to track. So how would you keep that thing alive if you only have parts for it? That's kind of what they're talking about too. A small local police department might have one multi-purpose forensic workstation with 1 or 2 basic workstations or high-end laptops. Yeah, that's right. You can now use laptop PCs with USB 3.0 or SATA hard disk to create a lightweight mobile forensic workstation. Yeah, you could have that for the field if you had like a van. If you work for the police, they might give you a forensic van that handles that. Or you could do early processing, but not full intake. You have it assigned to the cart in the back, and you take out the cart, then you inventory it the moment you get in and put it away in your evidence locker. Sorry, my brain's kind of fuzzy. Moving on. So selecting workstations for private sector labs. Here's it comes a little more different. Requirements are easy to determine. Businesses can conduct internal investigations, so you have a lot of resources at your fingertips. Identify the environment you deal with, hardware platform, operating system. This is more consistent because there's a standardized workstation, right? Wherever you work. If it's private, public, you're going to have that. But if you're operating out of the police station, it's a little different because whatever's out in the wild could be 10, 20, even 30 years old, and you're expected to recover things from it. So that's kind of the difference of working outside in public in the sense, in that capacity. So with some digital forensic programs, you can work from a Windows PC exam, both Windows and Macintosh disk drives. Yeah, that's true. On to the next page. This is where your lab should have in stock digital camera because you need to take pictures of stuff sometimes. Assorted anti-stack bags, to catalog and put things away. External CD DVD drive, yeah, in case you need to read stuff you don't want to affect your computer. ID cables, yeah, there's still, I guess, the ID drive's still around. Ribbon cables for floppy disks, yeah, I'd argue, just in case. Extra USB 3.0 newer SATA cables, which now would include NVMe enclosures. SCSI cards, yeah, I guess, preferably ultra wide, yeah, that's more common. Graphic cards with PCI AGP types, yeah, in case you need to clone something and ask for that kind of card. Sorted firewire, and USB adapters, yep. Hard disk drives and USB drives, yep. At least 2.5 notebook ID drives, and ID's gone. It's essentially dead, but SATA, yeah, SATA's still around. But again, NVMe or M.2 is more popular now, or eSATA. kind of. Computer hand tools, yeah, you always want a set of tools in case you need to crack the computer open and get things out. That's why you need it. Or a hard drive if you need to take it apart sometimes. So, what operating systems do you need in software inventories? Here's what you need. You need a copy of Office, current, older version. No, it's got to be current. Hex, editor, yeah. Programming language, Visual Studio, Perl, or Python. Visual Studio, Perl, Python. Yeah, I would argue C++ is also needed. But I think Perl might cover that. No, Perl won't cover that. Sorry, my brain's trying to figure out which IDE you would use, but that's really not important at this juncture. Specialized viewers such as QuickView, third-party or open source Office suites. That doesn't make any sense. Quicken and QuickBook accounting applications are. You're probably wondering why. In case you're dealing with financial crimes, you need to plug it in and make a ledger for it to make sense. And why was this transferred on this date? Why was that transferred on this date? Why was that moved? Where did that go from this account? You need that in case you also pull those kinds of files so you can open up those specialized kind of files that you can't really open without that software. That's why. So you also need what's called a disaster recovery plan. It ensures you can restore your workstation and investigation files to their original condition. Recover from catastrophic situations, virus contamination, and reconfigurations. But this is also why you use external drives. And it makes sense, and you're off the network. So if your machine gets damaged, only your machine gets damaged, somebody else's. Yeah, you might lose some work. You can just down the whole area. You know what I mean? It includes backup tools such as Norton Ghost. Yeah, you can still use Ghost, but there's other tools out there like Chronos True Image. Try to think of this off the top of my head, but I just can't right now, guys. I'm just really exhausted. Microsoft Command Tools, I think, could work too, depending on the version that you're using for backing up and recovery. It's called what's called MCCD, I think is what it's called, Microsoft Configuration Management Tool. MCMT. It's starting to get phased out for, I forget, Intune is what I'm thinking about. But you would be networked, but for this you wouldn't. Anyways, configuration management, keep track of your software updates to your workstation. Yeah, but again, if you're not networked, you would be fine because you don't want to hurt anything. For allowed use high-end RAID servers, if you don't know what RAID is, I can explain that in a separate video. You must consider methods of restoring large data sets. This will probably be RAID 10 or 5, probably 10. If you took a networking server class with me, I covered RAID, you'll know what I'm talking about. Don't worry, guys, I'm not going to roll the book at you when it comes to RAID. Large end servers must have adequate data backup systems in case of major failure or more than one drive. Yeah, always back up your backups backup because you never know when you need the backup. So always make sure you have a backup plan, guys. So risk management. Applying for equipment upgrades, I guess. But risk management involves determining how much risk is acceptable for any process or operation. As you've heard me mention, if you watched my Unit 1 lecture that was optional, you cannot mitigate all of the risk in the world. Risk is there no matter what. You go out for a walk, there's a risk you're going to get hurt, trip, twist your ankle, cut your knee if you fall, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get into it, but again, that's just kind of how much risk is around. Identify equipment your lab depends on so you can periodically replace it. Yeah, things burn out, things break down. So what burns out more often than not? Do you have one backup of it? Do you have 3 backups of it? How much backup equipment do you have? And then equipment you can replace when it fails. Some equipment is more robust than others. You might have one of those things sitting around in the back in case if you need it, if this one dies in the middle of the work you're doing. Computing components last 18 to 36 months under normal circumstances. I don't know about the 18-month thing, but sure, let's go with it. Social upgrades at least every 18 months, preferably every 12 months. Yeah, you can update your stuff every year if you got the budget for it. But if you don't, you're upgrading every year and a half, 2 years. It just depends how much money they give you to work with too. But that's something your manager will consider, etc. Building a business case for developing a forensic lab. This is support managers and other team members. So you gotta convince all these people like why you guys need one. Business case plan you can use to sell your services to management clients. That's if you're kind of going private or you're in the industry where you know they could use it. You can convince them, they'll help you set it up. They'll give you the funds. Demonstrate how the lab will help your organization save money and increase profits. I mean, sure, or you just want to solve a crime because you want to work for the government to do this kind of stuff. That's kind of where this mostly goes. Or military, whatever. Compare cost of the investigation with cost of a lawyer. That's a good way of convincing people though. Look, that's how much it would cost me legally if we hire a lawyer or a lawsuit happens, or this is how much it costs me to do it if it's just me running the lab. Yeah. Protect intellectual property, trade secrets, and future business plans. This is more geared towards like private industry. What they're saying here, I don't really. I'm not a private industry guy, so I can't answer that. Preparing business case for a digital forensic lab. 1 of 3 is to beat 3 sides of the stuff, guys. And we're almost home free. 4 more. Keys in my fingers. 4 more slides to go. Investigators must plan ahead to ensure that money is available for facilities, tools, supplies, and training for your forensic lab. You need to justify to the person controlling the budget the reason a lab is needed. So, hey, I can save you guys money. This is how. This is why. Give me money. I can do this. Requires constant efforts to market the lab services to previous, current, and future customers and clients. Oh man, this feels sleazy. It needs to include faculty cost, facility cost. God, faculty. I'm thinking about faculty and staff. Facility cost, hardware requirements, software requirements, malicious budget needs, miscellaneous malicious. I mean, it's going to be malicious if you're using for the right intent, right? Miscellaneous budget is like extra crap, post-its, pens, whiteout, whatever. Approval and acquisitions. You must present the budget case with the business or the budget to upper management for approval. Yeah, if they like the idea, like go upper management. Here's what we're trying to do. Why we're trying to do it. Here's how much it'll cost. Here's how much it'll save. It's some numbers game, right? As part of your business case, describe how implementation of all approved items will be processed. So here's how we're going to do it. That's what's going to cost this much to do it. This what the results would be. Timeline showing expected delivery or installation dates and expected completion dates must be included. So you're showing the whole. Literally, it's called a timeline. You're showing them from now to here is what it can cover. This is what you can do. This is how long it'll take to get this running. You're just explaining yourself. You're selling yourself literally. Schedule inspection dates. That's more cake cutting and red ribbon crap you got to deal with. And then acceptance testing. Consider the following items: inspect the facility to make sure it meets security criteria for containing and controlling digital evidence. So congratulations, you got your lab. Now test it. Test it to high heaven. Test all communications, email. Memos, whatever you do, test all hardware to verify it's operational and make sure all the equipment works. That's essentially what it means. Install and start all software tools, just make sure everything runs. Correction for acceptance. Your business case must anticipate problems that can cause delays in lab production. Like I said, life happens. If it takes longer, explain why it's taking longer, what you've run into. Normally people accept it because you're honest. You're working right. After all essential corrections have been made, the lab can go into production. Okay. Implement lab operating procedures. Make up what your lab needs to do and why you do it, and how you do it, and what you go about it. So, moving on, guys. The summary you have all been waiting for this sector. We're only at 45 minutes so far for a lecture. Not too bad for 43 slides of me trailing off randomly. I apologize. Digital Forensics Lab is where you conduct investigations, store evidence, and do most of your work. Said that. Seek to upgrade your lab, upgrade your skills through training. So we're talking about lab. The lab facility must be physically secure so evidence is not lost, corrupted, or destroyed. It is harder to plan a computer forensics lab for a police department than for a private organization or corporation. The reason being, for the police department, you have to take into account all the kinds of hardware on the world that you could run into. That's why. And budgeting. It's a public thing. Do you have enough funds to do it halfway, the whole way, or 3/4 of the way? You got to learn to work with it. Private gives you more money. Same thing with corporations. They're essentially one and the same. I don't know why they're, I guess, why they're separated in this, but that's what I'm getting at. Anyways. A forensic workstation needs to have adequate memory storage and ports to deal with common types of cases that come to the lab. You have a powerful workhorse, right? Your lab is only as good as your workhorse. Prepare a business case to enlist the support or manage other team members when building your forensic lab. You just got to convince people. And that's all I have for this one, guys. I will see you in the next lab. Have a good one.